Anyway, it's 10 o'clock. Thank you, Michael.
Thank
And
you.
David, did you bring a reading this week?
I most certainly did. And today's reading addresses the concept of darkness.
Ah,
And when you think of darkness, of course, you think of either depression or of loss. But I don't think this poem deals with darkness in the same way. I think I like to see it dealing with darkness as the setting of the sun, the stars coming out, and allowing me to do what I love so much and so dearly. It's Thomas Gray's elegy, written around 1751. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing herd winds slowly o'er the lea. The plowman homeward plows his weary way and leaves the world to darkness and to me. Thank you. Back to you, Marty.
very
Can I,
nice.
can
Thank
I
you.
say
Thank
something
you,
to that?
David.
Yeah,
Sure.
thank you very much. David, I want to tell you something. One of the things that I did in Hollywood was I did a lot of um I forget the word uh, with people that ask me about different things in the entertainment industry, and I always pointed out I used Las Vegas as as something to talk about. Now, the darkness also brings out the very uh, brings out beauty because it's a backdrop. In other words, if you've ever seen Las Vegas in the daytime, it's beautiful, but then at night it becomes spectacular because of the darkness.
Yeah,
The lights and everything show up more. Things glitter in the darkness, like the stars.
yeah.
So the word I
Yes.
was looking for was consulting. I
Hmm.
consulted about that and
Hmm.
Very nice.
about illumination in the dark, illuminating the dark. And so that's what I wanted to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Let me read our opening prayer, and then we can delve into the Torah again. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah.
Right?
Amen.
Amen.
One of the things we're in the midst of the golden calf story. Oh yes, Don.
Before we lose the darkness thread, does anyone remember the origin of the saying, all the darkness in the universe cannot extinguish the light of a single candle?
I know
It does
I know
sound
there was a
familiar.
variation on that with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Hmm.
Okay, but I don't know that particular quote.
Okay, thanks.
Sounds very familiar. It's rather familiar to me.
It
Vaguely.
is. It is. We'll have to Google it.
It's easy to do, yeah.
Anyway, we're in the midst of the golden calf story, and we have had a very lengthy talk uh, about Aaron, the role Aaron is playing. And actually, if you look into some of the commentaries in your Tanakh, you will see that there are different tones that people take. One is that they made me do it. The other is that he partook. He had partaken in the building of the golden calf, and in Torah it shows that he wound up uh, telling them what to do, and he himself cast the gold into the fire, okay, and the mold and everything. And later on, it's an interesting, we're going to read his response to Moses. So this is a very important series of events. It is a turning point that has potential disaster for the Jewish people. Hello, darkness. okay, or light. And we're going to see how this story now is going to unfold once after 40 days or more. Poor Moses, he shattered the tablets. We read about that were written by God. And he is very upset with the Israelites, and so is God. Okay, so we will, that's where we left off. And why don't we just go back a little bit to refresh our memories? Start with verse 15. We are on Exodus 32, verse 15.
Okay, would you like me to begin?
Yes.
Okay, and Moses turned and went down from the mount with the two tables of the testimony in his hand, tables that were written on both their sides. On the one side and on the other were they written. And the tables were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God graven upon the tables. And when Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he came unto Moses. There is a noise of war in the camp. And he said, it is not the noise, it is not the voice of them. They shout for that shout for mastery, neither is it the voice of them that cry for being overcome. But the noise of them that sing do I hear. And it came to
Okay,
pass.
let's stop at that point. Many of us have something else written in their books. In mine, it said the tablets were God's work and the writing was God's writing, incised upon the tablets. And when Joshua heard the sound of the people in its boisterousness, he said to Moses, there is a cry of war in the camp. But he answered, and it's with a lowercase h. But he answered, it is not the sound of the tune of triumph or the sound of the tune of defeat. But he answered, it is not the but he answered, it is not the sound of the tune of triumph or the sound of defeat. It is the sound of song that I hear. Okay, so it's slightly different. Any comments about all of this? Yes, Don.
A couple of questions. One, I might need a rabbi for this. Is there any mention before this in the Torah of the written word? I don't recall any mention before this of the actual written word. And if that's correct, what language would it be written in, and who would be able to read it?
Okay, that's a good question. I'll first open it. I do have an answer, but as usual, I always open it up to everyone else. And we do know that it was by word of mouth primarily, okay? Because Moses, God said to Moses, this is what to tell the people, all these things. God did speak to the people beforehand with the 10 commandments and some elaboration, and Moses spoke to them. And that's the oral tradition. So what do you think was written? What you're really asking, what did God put on those two tablets that Moses destroyed?
Yeah, what were the actual characters written, engraved? And to me, it's like super profound, because if this is the first instance of the written word, then it really is the period in history where the law began, because it would be no longer be what people said was the law. It would be an objective law that you could refer to in the tablets. So
Okay.
it's easy for us to skip over that, but I wonder if this would be the first time.
Okay. Yes, Lynn,
There's a lot in what you're asking, multiple questions. I
that's
think.
right.
First of all, in a lot of analyses, the 10 commandments were not considered commandments. They are not the 10 mitzvot. They are the 10 Aseret HaDiburim, or they're never called the Aseret Mitzvot. So in sense of law code, they are not. They are like the principles by which the laws will be derived. These are the overarching guiding values of this community. It's not the same as what we'll get or what we've gotten in Mishpatim, which are this is how you treat your neighbor when he's lost his donkey and you're walking by. It's not that kind of law. So it's kind of like the guiding principles of the community. And then you ask about what language they were in. Well, they were in Hebrew, but that doesn't tell you anything about the script. You can use different scripts to write down a language. So it wouldn't have been Hebrew, what's in our Torah or in the Tanakh, and it wasn't even Aramaic. It probably would have been an early version of Hebrew, which came from this. I mean, in the development of the language, it was actually invented in the Sinai by Canaanites or people working in the Egyptian mines. And so the influence of the Egyptian alphabet, but then they have a different language, so they adapted. Let's do an alphabet. And the signs were completely different than
That's an archaeological view, Lynn, but my question really was within the Torah. Is this the first appearance of the written word of any sort?
Well, I don't. Was there?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But this is written by God. What we're going to read, Moses will be doing it in what I would call Proto-Hebrew. Okay, the way the written language, and he had to learn it somehow, so it must have been available to the Israelites, because you just don't sit down and start writing, but it's one of those things. We would have to make that assumption.
God inscribed the tablets, though, right? Moses didn't even have to do that.
Initially, that's right.
But
And then Moses will come down and do that again. He will rewrite what he's supposed to write down.
But people, if nobody could read it, it wouldn't make any sense. So there must have been some written literary tradition already.
It's such a mystery there because Moses destroys the tablets, so we never really know what was on them.
The original ones, yes.
We never really know. It's a mystery. All we know is what Moses inscribed from memory. So there's a gap there, and I find it fascinating.
Well, let's read on to see how this happens. You're sort of quite a bit ahead of us right now.
Sorry.
But let's go back to what we just read, because we've gone quite far ahead in our thinking. I think it's important sometimes those questions are very good, but when they jump too far ahead, they're detracting from what we've just read. Okay, so just time it a little better.
I got it.
And these tablets are God's work. Okay, so now there are two things that can happen here. One, what well, that's all we know is that it's God's writing on the tablets that Moses is ready to carry down to the people. But the people are behaving in a strange way. And also, verse 18 is written poetically. Okay. Just want to make mention of that because in my more current edition, there are slash marks indicating that this is either a poem or a song that Moses is answering by which Moses is answering. But anything else that stands out? Do we note something about Joshua? His name gets mentioned several different times in the story so far. He's developing to be an important character. Yes, David.
Well, there's a famous interpretation, the one that comes out of the movie, where Joshua says the Ten Commandments, when Joshua says, there's the noise of war in the camp. And Moses answers him and says, it is not the noise of war, it is the noise of revelry.
Yes.
And
that is the interpretation of the song, the sound of song that Moses hears. That's another interpretation of that. And there's a lot more that goes into that. That goes into that. As we read along, we're going to justify what you said. Yes. Please, Grace.
Isn't this reminiscent of, they're boisterous and they're happy, and God's thinking that, they're happy about this golden calf. And remember when Miriam starts sounding the horns and making music, they were making music, Miriam, after the Exodus, that piece of it. So I'm guessing that's kind of reminiscent of a previous scenario. And I'm thinking that it's a point where God's feeling less than, because they're, all this attention is going towards this golden emblem that they have designed. That's just my
right.
thought, my 2 cents.
It's an important thought. If we would turn back to Exodus 32, verses 7 and 8. Okay, if David, if you would care to read verses 7 and 8.
sure. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, go get thee down, for thy people that thou broughtest up out of the land of Egypt have dealt corruptly. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I have commanded them. They have made them a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed unto it, and said, this is thy God, O Israel, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt.
Okay, so here it's more than just song. Okay, it is they are dancing around and doing some things with regard to God is aware of what they have done, but their behavior is, some have included the word debauchery in their behavior.
Excuse me, is Helena all right?
I think she's dozed off.
Okay.
I think she just dozed off. Helene,
Honey. Sorry, guys.
that's okay. Okay, thank you.
Let's get the video.
Okay. Yeah, you could see her breathing and all that. So
Yeah, she's tired. I'm
yeah,
trying
she's tired. She's tired, but she likes to hear what we have to say in her dreams too.
to. Probably very true.
But anyway, so there's there's some very important commentaries about the behavior of the Jewish people, all the things that they were advised against doing. All the shalt nots and everything fit into some of this, especially the first several commandments or suggestions in a preamble or whatever you want to say. It they have strayed immensely. Excuse me.
I think what Rabbi Norman told us in a study one time was these are the statements of yet to come. The statements of yet to come, statements, not necessarily commandments, and supporting what was mentioned earlier. The 10 commandments weren't really commandments you must do. They were perhaps the statements of things yet to come for being Israelites and God's people.
It's interesting how different groups in Judaism interprets all of these things. And there's different midrash that the different groups sort of focus on, but it's imperative to realize these people were doing the wrong thing for multiple reasons. But the golden calf is just a symbol of all of their behavior. Yes, Don.
Well, verses 7 and 8, I think that's the first thing, the first expression in the Torah that I can recall of the quote, the jealous God. I mean, it's God is clearly saying it's my way or the highway, and don't pay any attention to these other gods. And maybe because it's the first time the Israelites have all been together as one mass of people.
And you're right. You're right. Remember, the people have also said, yes, and we will do it.
Yeah.
They've accepted everything. Yes. Please, Lynn.
Yeah, this is like the transition point between worship of this is our God, but there are also lots of other people have gods. And this is one among many. Two, there is only one God. And this God is not worshipped like all the other gods. And
that is a very good way of putting it.
Okay.
And that's how the story is going to unfold to support that.
So the people have not really fully come on board with this idea. This is not what they're used to.
That's right.
And they haven't made the transition, and it's a fairly sophisticated transition in their somewhat defense.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of changes in their expectations, their behavior, that have to be done. This is, you saw how everything was expanded based on the first 10 commandments. Already, there's a whole litany of things that's going to be different. Yes, please, Grace.
Could it be a possibility that, they felt abandoned all of a sudden, right? Moses is up on the mountain. They're distraught. They're ill at ease. They're not happy. And so why not throw a party, right? let's throw party and maybe we'll get a new leader. You know, is
And
Moses gone? Is he being replaced? You know, what the heck happened to our, you know, our rabbi, our Moses, our teacher, our leaders? I'm just kind of looking at it from all different angles, but when a group like that, maybe you could call it mob mentality, but I find it very interesting, and I look forward to hearing more comments and learning. I like what Rabbi said last night in the service, is that the idea of midrash is filling in the gap,
Right.
you know, in a midrash, and I really like that.
Yes. Yes, Don. Very good, Grace.
Yeah, thanks. I think historically, around the same time, 1500 BCE, I think the Egyptian pharaoh, I think Akhenaten, also had a single deity, Ra, the sun god. So it wouldn't be the first time in that period of history that there was monotheism. Well, Ra didn't last that long. I mean, it was soon replaced by more gods.
Okay. Very good.
Parallelism there.
Sure. Thank you. Yes, Michael.
I think it also could have been a state of acceptance and confusion.
Okay. It's like saying, oh, I'm sorry. You can mean it, or you can mean it by really changing your behavior, or you can just give word to it.
Well, the state of confusion and accepting what
I'm sorry.
yeah, the acceptance, is there really that God, and is it the right one for us? That's what I mean by the state of confusion and accepting.
You know, many of us need some sort of symbol that we can hold on to that says, this is my God. We're one of the few religions in the world that do not have a symbol for God. But Islam also doesn't have an image. Okay, it's forbidden in Islam as well. But in Christianity, they have their icons and their statuary. You have in Hindi, you have their statuary and icons. Egyptians had it at the times. Babylonians had it at the time. The Greeks, the Romans, they had pictures of their gods. That comes a little later in the history. But our God is sort of different. How is our God different?
Well, to the Jewish people, it's not, because the way we pray and what we understand, it's different for others when they look at our religion,
Okay.
because they don't see anything there, and they're wondering, who are we praying to, how, and all that. And I think also that there may be, this may be a far stretch, but I think that could lead to some people to anti-Semitism in a way, because it's very mysterious. It could be mysterious to others,
Sure.
you know. And what are we really after? People might think, what are we really doing? Because of the fact that we don't have an outward symbol.
Yes. What I was getting after is that we're one of the very few where God is in your mind. It's a state of mind. You do not have an image to worship. if you think carefully about that. And so this is a very unique situation. And all of you are correct in what you've been saying. But what I was getting after is that our religion is more in the mind than it is in an object. And I think that something that this is an underlying statement to this entire passage that we're going to be completing our reading. And with that in mind, no pun intended, look for it in the statements that God makes as we go through the rest of Torah. Okay, first Suzanne, and then Michael, and I think Grace had her hand up again.
Okay. Well, first, I want to say that not all Christians have idols, or I shouldn't say idols, icons.
Yeah,
That's Catholic.
it's true.
That's the Catholic Church, and to me, there's a big split between Catholicism, or the practice of it, and Protestantism, I guess you could say. And then I'm sorry I'm late, but I'll be late for my funeral, can I say. But I guess we're talking about, have they made the golden calf? Is that where we're at?
Yes, and Moses and God has seen that they're doing this, and Moses is
Has he?
in a pivotal position right now. He smashes the tablets written by God. Joshua is alerting him as he comes down the mountain. Remember, Joshua wasn't at the top of the mountain with Moses.
No, right.
Okay, but
Okay.
And he learns of all of this, and we're talking about the different concepts that are important in this portion of the of our Bible. And what I find interesting, what I mentioned, what I found interesting is that there are very few religions that have just the concept of God in their mind. If you go through the history of art, for a very long time, one of the major subjects are scenes from the Bible, okay, and images of God. It's not only in the Catholic Church. There's statuary in many churches, but as Suzanne is saying, not all churches do that. Islam doesn't, okay, but it comes later. It still has a 1.5 century millennia to go, but it's something that is unique. But as we read, we are going to be told about different aspects of this theme. This is a concept of God in your mind. How does that fit into what we already know about God?
Well, I was going to talk, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the Torah, it says, you shall love God with all of your might, with all of your heart.
And
It doesn't say with all of your mind.
well, it says soul.
Soul, heart, might.
Yes. Okay. It does. It does. You are correct. Okay. Grace and then Don.
Thank you. Kind of revisiting verses 7 and 8 again, when
Sure.
God says these are a stiff-necked people, right? They're stubborn. They're really stubborn. I've already, shown them who I am, what I'm capable of, and man, they're stubborn. And then back forward to what we were just speaking of, what it reminds me of is God is in my spirit, that it's a spiritual connection that I seek to have with God as my God. And maybe those are, the way I feel it, but I'm willing to learn, and I could be very wrong.
Well, if you see, and I just want to say something here, and then I'll get to Don. If you see something in a painting or a book or a statue, okay, does that change you? Well, let's put it, doesn't that influence your image of God in your mind? But if you don't have an image of God to look at, I will be what I will be is universal. Because each of us then will see God a little differently. In other words, he doesn't have to be white, he doesn't have to be black, he doesn't have to be Asian, he doesn't have to be French, he doesn't have to be American, he doesn't have to be Spanish or Italian, whatever characteristic you want. But it's how you imagine that little voice in your mind, what it's coming from. And that, I think, is going to also play out as we read further in Torah as well. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say this without getting myself confused, but just coming back to the appearance here of the written word. Okay, so it seems to me that God isn't entirely in our minds. God is in the Torah. Without the Torah, there wouldn't be any Judaism. And so to me, Judaism is the Torah, and what gets into our minds is how what gets there via the Torah. So so I don't think it's, it would be total anarchy if Judaism was entirely in our minds. We need the Torah to give us a reference point. And we are not, like Buddhism doesn't even have a God.
That's right.
Literally billions of people who are Buddhists, but Buddha was not a deity. He was an ordinary person who had some insight.
That's right.
So we're not the only mental.
No, but that I understand where you're coming from. That's why I didn't say we're the only one. But in that part of the world, we were the only one that looks at it that way.
Okay.
And it's just a fascinating bit, and it just strikes me. And you are very correct when you bring in the written word. Why do you need a written word? We don't worship the Torah. Okay? But why do we need a written word?
K through 12.
Yes, okay, David, I'll give him a chance. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that the written word really implies a contract. And in all of the Exodus that we've done up to this point, there are a lot of very detailed contractual commandments that are given. And so to answer your question, the written word implies a contract, which the spoken word really does not.
It's more than just a verbal contract. Yes, once it's because people's memories can be different, and you need something in writing so that you can say this is what we believe and how we believe. The Torah is not just that. It's more than that. It's sort of like what you feel inside of you. Okay? It's not something out there. It's a gift to each one of us. And we have a physical representation of it, but there's a feeling conveyed by that. But it is not God. Okay? And we don't, although we have certain rituals assigned to it, it is not God. Yes, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, as you say, the Torah is not worship. It's there to be followed
Yeah.
and to be adhered to, and to conduct one's life by the written word of the Torah. I think that's what it's the purpose of the Torah. And in that, you know something, and I just thought of this, in that regard, and in that respect, you actually do worship the Torah by following it. It's a matter, it really comes down to a matter of respecting the Torah.
That's the
when
word
you-
I would use. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I agree with you on that. Yeah, Suzanne, please.
To me, not only the Torah, but also the rest of the canon, is a letter of love from God to us, from beyond space
Good way of looking at it.
and
It's a good way of looking at it.
yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah,
He loves us.
very good. And now Lynn is going to give us more background.
Well, just as we're talking about what the Torah means. So the Hasidic tradition says that God looked into the Torah before
Yes.
God created the world. That it's like a blueprint for for creation. And by using the Torah as a guide, following the Torah, we approach the intent of creation,
Right.
which is to know the reality of the interconnected. God is always with us, especially in Hasidic tradition, where
Right.
God is everywhere. God is not a discrete being, which makes God an other. God is within, without, and all around.
Mhm.
And if we follow the Torah and learn from the Torah and allow it to guide us, we'll eventually come to understand that, not just intellectually, but as in our guts, that we can actually live it. So the Torah is supposed to be, I think, a guide for towards the truth of what our existence is. Why are we here? What do how do we
And-
live?
And it also is it represents how difficult it is to try to understand, and all the things that we talk about, knowledge, justice, all of and what we need to do and like that, but all of the it is a very important concept, love and understanding, wisdom. All of this is encompassed in the Torah, and very, very well stated. I was not a member of the Chabad, but I did study Zohar with a rabbi for 5 years, and that was just the tip of the iceberg.
So I study with a teacher from Jerusalem who was born here in Minnesota, actually. And we're going through Sfat Emet, commentary on the Torah. So it's Parsha by Parsha, but it's the Hasidic view.
Yes, yeah. So it's interesting because there are certain aspects of it that are that add to your understanding. You know what I mean? Now, there's some people who are very adherent, but I look at it as the information there adds to the understanding of the concepts. That's all I can say, well, at least my understanding of the concept. But I tend to try to bring in from all different angles. Yes, Michael.
Also, I believe the Torah is considered a living being. It lives. It's alive,
Mhm.
and it's indications of that is the way we treat the Torah. We treat it so carefully with I'll use the word again with a very high degree of respect. You know, it's adorned, it's stressed.
Oh, yeah.
It's if it's ever dropped, there's a certain ritual that you have to pick it up, and exactly the ritual I'm not sure of, but when you take a look at all of that surrounds the Torah, the writing of one, how carefully it has to be done, you know,
Mhm. Oh,
and
yes.
so when you consider all of these facts surrounding the Torah, you get a good idea of how the importance of it. Let me put it that way, and why many, especially the Hasidim and the Orthodox, treat it.
Yeah.
Very good.
The word sacred or holy is appropriate here, I think.
Yes. Yes. Well, let's get back to what we've been reading. I know we digressed, but I think it's important to understand what's going through the mind of Moses and possibly of God, why they're getting angry. Okay, it's much, I think of it as a parent. How would you feel if all of a sudden everything you just told the people to do or not to do, and they're doing otherwise? Okay, and it's really a difficult situation to deal with. Well, let's see if we would go on to verse 19, and we'll see how Moses winds up dealing with this. Verse 19 and 20. David, go ahead.
Okay. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing. And Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hands and broke them beneath the mount. And he took the calf which they had made and burnt it with fire and ground it to powder and strewed it upon the water and made the children of Israel drink of it.
Well,
And
what do you
Moses-
think about that? What do you think about that?
Moses has quite a temper.
Yes.
I think he wanted to shock them.
Yeah, it is. His reaction is a huge difference in the way he's behaved prior to this. There's only one other time we've learned about this, and that's when he meets this Egyptian beating an Israelite. We know he has a tendency to rage. Okay. Do you remember what he does at that time and what subsequently follows?
Well, he murders the Egyptian,
He murders the Egyptian.
and then he has to run away because
That's right.
it's known, and he's afraid Pharaoh's going to punish him.
And that is what starts this whole Exodus journey. Okay. And so it's here we know that he has this capacity.
I wonder, can I just say,
Sure.
I wonder how much of this is put on for, as I said, to shock the Israelites, because just in the previous paragraph, he's argued God away from, it seems that he's argued God away from destroying
Yes.
higher people. So by contrast, his anger is like a little tiny thing compared to what could have
Exactly.
happened.
Exactly. But it's still a very impressive gesture showing, and this is one of the things we're going to find out more and more about Moses being the intermediary between God and the people as we read through the rest of Torah. Okay, first Suzanne, and Grace, was your hand up too?
Yes.
Okay, so Suzanne and then Grace.
I think Moses was trying to underscore that this calf or idol is nothing, and by destroying it and having them drink the water to totally get rid of it, I think really underscores that. And in some respects, I know the Israelites have been through a lot, but I want to use the word chutzpah here. I mean, it just seems to me they lived through the 10 plagues. They lived leaving Egypt. They lived through the parting of the Red Sea. They lived through watching Pharaoh's army be destroyed. And then to turn around and think that this calf is their benefactor and protector. I mean, and they thumb their noses at God. Well, it's easy for me to be an armchair quarterback, but it's just hard to understand after living through all that to turn to some inanimate object that they know darn well nothing to do with their rescue. Nothing.
Okay, good point.
So yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Yes, Don. Don, you're muted.
Sorry. I always try to remember that this is a story.
Right.
And these and the story is to illustrate. It's a moralistic story. And so the things like the golden calf may be an exaggerated illustration of how people could turn against God. So I always try to keep that in mind, not take it totally literally. Well, maybe I should. I don't know.
Okay. Well, these are things, yes, Don. This is sort of like an allegory.
Yeah.
Because we can find other ways to explain it. But if we accept it at face value, if it did occur as it's written, this was a huge transgression. Okay, and even it's with the allegory, if you an allegorical view, you would say that the same thing. This was a huge transgression, and that's what we're talking about in different manners. Yes, Michael.
What happened to Grace?
Hi, Stacy.
Hi, Stacy. Welcome. I invited her to join us.
Good.
Yes,
Good.
I'm sorry I'm late. I was up extremely late picking up my granddaughter from the airport, so I slept in.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome
thank
to
you for
Green Valley.
reminding
We
me.
all accept that. Okay, I'm sorry with the interruption. You were saying, Grace?
I just wanted to introduce Stacy.
Oh, okay.
Tell her where we're at. We're in Exodus 32, and we just
Yes.
completed. We're talking about verse 19 and 20.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments here? Well, what if,
I'm not sure.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Please.
I mean, you can read this. It's very valid to read this as, a real rebellion and transgression. But you can also read it as an expression of tremendous fear on the part of the Israelites, Moses having been gone for so long, and
Right.
where, you know, where are we going? And so, sometimes it's very primitive. Think of him like a
Yeah.
very like a preteen, like just not very sophisticated emotionally, and not very confident. They haven't entered the land yet, don't forget. We
That's
haven't
right.
gotten to the whole spies thing. They're still complaining about the food. You know, it's like where we are in the maturity of this group as a people. And because I have grandchildren of this age, and this reminds me of behavior of one who's has no impulse control, cannot control her mouth or her need, and sometimes pilfers things. And
Sure.
then she's very, very sorry. And it's not like she's a psychopath, but but she can't control herself emotionally. And I think there's some evidence that, I mean, it could be read that way, that these people
Sure.
are very, very primitive in some ways, not very strong. And like you just heard, you shall not make any images, of me. And then they go and do it. It's like, I can't help it, kind of like, I'm so afraid I need this image.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, because this is especially, this is very much like bringing up children. How a parent trying to raise children, and in a world where everything is totally different. That behavior would be acceptable in other cultures. So it's very hard to do that. Yes, Stacy, welcome.
Thank you. Never mind. Sometimes when I am struggling spiritually, I need something tangible, something that I can perceive with all my senses in order to feel grounded. Like there's, I have to jump into that illusionary reality in order to just kind of ground myself until I can pray on it a little more or deal with the issue. So could this be pointing to that maybe struggle with those people, is that, having that God out there, that you can't touch, and you have maybe the experience, but maybe don't know how to trust that experience. So sometimes having, people with their crosses or other forms, the book, something to hang on to, kind of helps ground me until I can relax a bit and get back into more of the inward sense, the inward sense of God.
So this is one of the differences that we are confronted with. What Stacy just said is very common in human nature. Okay, but we're being asked to do something more.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very difficult task. A lot of people can say that they will do it, and then they find that there is too much involved, and they will say, well, I can't do it. And then they need something tangible to bring them back, or if something bad happens, they need something tangible, something. But what we're being asked to do is to do it in our mind more than the tangible.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. That's
Mhm.
hard. You are very correct in that way. Yes, Don.
Well, we haven't seen idols since I think Laban way back.
That's right.
That is collection And God wasn't too angry at that time. I don't recall. But now that everything's changed. So I have to wonder whether graven images were part of the Israelite deluge since then, or is this the first time they suddenly decided to start casting gold into?
Okay, the answer to your question, you know the answer. Where have the people come from?
Bondage.
What? I'm
Out of,
sorry.
out of bondage.
Out of Egypt.
Okay.
And where have they been exposed? What have they been exposed to their entire lives while living in Egypt?
Idols.
That's it. So they knew this type of behavior. Now they're being asked to get rid of that. And that's hard. That's very hard. How many of us follow superstitions at one time in our lives or another? How many of us need to look up a horoscope? How many of us think we need to have more and more money? Okay. It's very tangible, and the more we have, some people are happier the more they have, like that. So there are different ways of thinking about things, and we're being asked to abandon all of that. It's a very difficult task. It's really a change in basic human nature. Yes, Michael. Michael, you're muted.
The Israelites were leaving Egypt because they were in bondage. While they were in bondage, they were surrounded by gods, all of these gods.
Yes.
And so now they're coming out of that. They want to leave that behind, I would think. They want to
You
leave
would think.
you want to leave all of those gods who kept them in bondage. Not only the Egyptians, but their gods. And so they want to, they're leaving that. And you would think, like, we're rid of that. And maybe that's just the image of God, the mental image of God, not something tangible, would be beneficial in a way to offset their thinking. So that's where maybe the confusion would come in play, and the accepting of a God they cannot see or touch or feel. So that there's a lot of confusion there, I think.
Okay, good point. Good point. Any other comments? So what about drinking the powder? It was put into water, and then the Israelites had to drink it. Any comments about that? Is there a parallel with anything else in more modern way of speaking? You're shaking your head. Yes, Lynn. You're muted, Lynn.
Did I get it all? Yeah. I was thinking of the parallel with the suspected adulteress that comes later.
Yes, it is. It is used in that.
It's called.
It's true. But one could say eating your own words.
Yeah, that's in the commentary.
It is in some commentaries, yes.
Yeah.
And so it can do it. Does anyone remember one of the medicinal treatments with gold?
Yeah. I just thought of another one though.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
When I was little, and my mother didn't like what I said. She made me wash out my mouth with soap.
There you go. There you go. That bitterness. That's right. So you do that, but gold used to be used medicinally. gold injections were given to people with arthritis and other rheumatic diseases because it would help. That's all. But now we don't do any of that. Okay. But it's
Thank you, doctor.
okay. I know I still remember some of the old stuff too. Anyway, any other comments about this, the phraseology? By the way, I have another comment. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lynn.
I was just
And
reading-
Eileen, I think your hand was up.
I was just reading the description that Moses, in my translation, hurled the tablets from his hands and shattered them. And
Yes.
at the foot. So in another commentary, which I just remember, is that when he saw the Egyptians worshiping the calf, he was so shocked that the tablets, which are stone, two stone things, all of a sudden he realized how heavy they were, and he he didn't hurl them, he dropped them in shock. And yeah, that's
Sure.
a midrash.
That's almost based on Mel Brooks' version.
Well, Mel Brooks
You
version
have
was
all
based on
these, oops, they start dropping.
Yeah. Mel Brooks knew the midrash, I think, though.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's there are a lot of different statements about this. Also, I found there's one thing here in verses 11 through 14 are part of the traditional Torah reading for the afternoon of Tish B'Av. Okay, so a portion of this. By the way, for those of you who still have the original version of our Mishkan Tefillah, we had the thicker book. All of the references for the prayers are in there, and you will see that in that book as footnotes where they are taken from the Psalms, the Torah, and other books of the Tanakh. Okay, and also if there is an important person that wrote that prayer that we read, it's in that book. It is not in the Sabbath prayer book that we use now. Okay, but that was why the original book was obtained, because it had all that necessary information for us, for those interested in it. Anyway, any other comments to be made about this segment we've been reading? Well, let's move on. David, if you would read verses 21 through 23. And by the way, David's version is Old English. Old English. It is not in any of the current texts. So it's worthwhile trying to follow it along in your text. You will see other wording. And you will see other, because over time, English language changes, but sometimes we need to go back to the basic Hebrew to find out what the actual word says. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it's okay if I use this version.
Sure.
Okay, and Moses said unto Aaron, what did this people unto thee, that thou hast brought a great sin upon them? And Aaron said, let not the anger of my Lord wax hot. Thou knowest the people, they are set, and that they are set on evil. So they said unto me, make us a God which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we know not what is become of him. And I said unto them, whosoever hath any gold, let them break it off. So they gave it to me, and I cast it into the fire, and they came out this calf.
Okay, so So, so have any comments about this? Aaron and the people. Okay, let's center on that, and then we can go back to the golden calf if we need to. Okay, first Suzanne had her hand up, I think, and then Don.
Well, I feel like Aaron's like a little kid that got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And so he's trying to worm his way out of what happened. And then to say out came this calf. I mean, that's like the dog ate my homework. I mean, golden calves just do not jump out of a fire. I mean, that just,
Sure,
I
sure.
mean, that was really lame, but I guess he felt like he had to say something.
Yeah, he's on the spot right now. You're right. Okay. And yes, Don.
I was just gonna echo Susan's comment that, you know, Aaron is not owning up to this, and but also somebody would have had to have made the mold for the calf. And that's,
Yeah.
Well, yes.
that's a major project.
Because if you go back to verse 5, Don,
Verse
verse
5.
5, and if you have it in front of you, could you read that?
Yeah. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, "Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord."
Okay, now go back a little further
Okay.
to verse 2.
And Aaron said unto them, "Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me." And all the
Keep
people,
going.
and all the people break off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fastened it with graven tool. And after he had made it a molten calf, and they said, "These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt."
So who made the cast?
Yeah, it would have to be our friend Aaron.
Aaron.
Either Aaron or his friends. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. At his direction. Okay,
But it wasn't a trivial project, so I mean.
correct. So when we come back to his excuse, it's very lame. Okay, some people would say he's lying. Okay. Anything else that you wanted to say about this? Does it remind you of any other story? It's a different story. Yeah, yes, Suzanne,
It reminds me of Adam and Eve.
you got it. Go ahead. Why don't you say that? Go ahead.
When God was questioning and Adam tried to blame it all on Eve, saying that the woman you gave me made me eat of the fruit.
Yes,
It wasn't like
but Eve is part of
jumped on
that
top.
too. What does Eve say also?
Oh, I forgot what she said.
The serpent made me do it.
Oh, right. That's
Okay.
like, yeah. Who said that?
There was a comedian. He
Yeah.
used to say all the time, "The devil made me do
Yeah,
it."
I can't remember his name. It was everybody would always.
Flip Wilson.
That's it. Yes.
That's it. And the lady that he always represented. As an aside, my mother-in-law always thought the lady was not Flip Wilson in costume. It was it was an actress that was on the program.
Oh,
It was very funny.
Are you talking about the church lady?
No. Well, this was Flip Wilson was a comedian. Would you say back in the 80s or 90s?
no,
Earlier.
Earlier than
yeah.
that.
70s, I think.
Okay, thank you. But very, very funny, and it was very funny. But he always used the phrase, you know, the lady who it was always said, well, the devil made me do it. That's right. So it's all similar. We do something bad. We can, but is it the devil or is it us? Do we still have that continuing weakness in all of us? And those of you who have read other books in the Tanakh, human beings are flawed. It's not just in Torah; it's all of the books, and it's in prophets, it's in Kings, it's in Judges. I mean, each one of the stories, each one does something good, but also has a flaw that they have to overcome, or their lives are turned to disaster because of not following the good side, if you will. They were on the dark, too much on the dark side. Okay. Any other comments about what we've reading in this paragraph? And you know, I've heard both sides. Well, Aaron was taken advantage of by the people, but Aaron sort of did all of these things. I've heard other things that Aaron was able to hold the people together. You know, so he did it to hold everything together. I don't know. I don't know which is which. We can fill in all the missing pieces with Midrash. Yes, Grace.
I think I'm seeing parallels between God's behavior, the people's behavior, Moses's behavior, and Aaron. You know, there's that shock and awe. Of course, they all seem to have that. But is it possible that they're like, well, who's really in charge here? What kind of civilization should we be? Because of where we come from, we're familiar with that. And now this is, you know, the unknown. So there's so many unknown they're moving towards. I think, you know, that's got to rattle your cage once in a while a little bit. Mm-hmm. The parallel I was trying to point at was that God has jealousy and he can be enraged, and so does Moses. And I'm not sure about Aaron at this point, but the people were like, well, what's happened? Where did he go? So there's maybe the feeling of abandonment and having to go through what they've just come from and gone through to get there. Perhaps they're concerned or worried about having to deal with that again.
Good point.
I don't know, but that's just a feeling I'm thinking.
Okay. Think of it almost like when your children are leaving home. Okay, they're going away to college, or they found a job and they're going to be on their own now. And you've hoped you've taught them well. Okay. Teaching can be done one of two ways, or a combination. You can tell children what to do. They can pick up on how you do things, or it's a combination of the two.
Or there is also a third way, the Aristotelian way, where you ask question after question.
Yes, and it does, but that's sort of the halfway in between, because you don't know if it's another way of approaching this saying. It's sort of saying what I just finished saying. You have to ask the questions constantly. But if you only serve the questions looking for the answers, you will never find them. You'll be too concentrated on the questions. You have to finally have some conclusion. And so it's a very interesting, it's another interesting way of looking at what the people have to go through here. Grace is pointing out a lot of important information. David is pointing out a lot of important information. Lynn did. I mean, this is why I say it's a pivotal point in the history of the Jewish people. It's also a pivotal point for the teenager leaving home. What's going to happen with the family and what's going to happen with the teenager. There's a lot of parallels here. And if we look at it that way, we say, yeah, the kid isn't only a brat, he's trying to figure out which way, or she is trying to figure out which way is the better way. And sometimes they make the wrong decision, and they have to learn on their own that if you make the wrong decision, you have to own it and then move on to try again until you get it right. So it's the same thing for the Jewish people here. That's why I've always said this is a book of parenting. It's a book of sociology. Whatever you want, it's listed in here. It's the human experience. So what else? Anything else that anyone wants to bring up about this? Okay, verse 20. We still have lots of time. Let's try to do verse 25 through 29.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can do justice to that.
And when Moses saw that the people were broken loose, for Aaron had let them loose for a derision among their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Whoso is on the Lord's side, let him come unto me." And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, "Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, put ye every man his sword upon his thigh, and go on and fro the gate, and go to and fro the gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor." And the sons of Levi did according to the words of Moses. And there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. And Moses said, "Consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, for every man hath been against his son and against his brother, that he may also bestow upon you a blessing this day."
Okay. Comments? Yes, Helene.
Over and over and over and over, we keep saying, let's go back to the original. Let's go back to see how it all started. Where did it start? Who is right? Who is wrong? There is no right. There is no wrong. There is only God. And God gives us free will to choose our path. And when we do this and we try it out and it works, we think we found some great thing. No, because it may not be great for you, but it's fabulous for me. And don't.
Well stated.
Yes, it's a choice. God gives us a choice of trying out your own perception, your own, see, it's the difference between feelings and thinking. And when you deal with your own feelings, you can have any number of discussions.
Good
But-
point.
But, if it's your thinking and you can prove something, the only thing that I'm thinking of are children right now. Because children don't play around like that. If a child is angry at his brother and he hits him, or somebody takes the little girl's doll and hits it or something, let me tell you, these children feel
Yeah.
our original stuff. And who's to say one is right and one is wrong? Only by proving it inside their soul. And only if they can let go of their anger or their joy and make up with love. Nobody talks about love because you've got to end up loving after your feelings come out. And if you can love the person you're upset with and realize that everybody makes mistakes and everybody has different ways of intuitive knowledge, then we will not be so prejudiced because we're talking about prejudice here.
Okay. Thank you. Very good. Very wise. Any other comments? Yes, Lynn.
I find this very troubling. It's a different thing when the Israelites have sinned and God sends a plague and thousands of them have died. It's a whole other thing when you strap on swords and they kill them. And this happens other places in the Tanakh, and also has an echo of the Maccabees.
Oh, yes.
It's kind of a civil disagreement, and we solve it by killing each other. Like the Hellenized Jews, they had to be, killed, eliminated. It's a theme that runs through.
Yes.
And it's for me, a very disturbing theme.
It is. Think back in the story of Jacob. Who are the ones that, in the story of Dinah? Think back to that. Who are the brothers that lead and avenge the avenging of Dinah?
Yeah, Shimon and Levi.
That's right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you remember several years ago when we were discussing that, we were talking about how certain traits can be passed on in families. And we're going to see this again and again in certain families, whether it's learned behavior or genetic. I'm not going to get into that debate, but there is a tendency, and we can see certain things in Torah and all of the other books of Tanakh, the same thread that in the behavior of certain people of different ancestries. That's all I'm going to say on that. Very, very well stated, Lynn. Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth, and I appreciate it. Yeah, it's important to see these things, because then you start saying, is there a way of changing?
Yeah.
Okay. And to me, it's personal, because I saw, after I learned about how my father was brought up, and how good a man he was, he rejected that behavior. Okay. And fortunately, I learned from my father, but he came from a very abusive situation. And you can change, but to do it requires an awful lot of effort. And so what I can see this, and I'm glad that he changed, because I didn't have to go through all that. But at the same time, he knowing that one person can change means that we all have that ability to, if we truly want to. So we are given that choice also, as was pointed out by Helene. Very, very good. Any other comments?
I have,
Please.
I
Yes,
have one.
yes, please, Grace.
So while Helene was sharing with us, that relationship to the children and God, this thought it popped into my mind. It's an old Chinese proverb about, and it's a symbol that is drawn where one side is crises and the other side is opportunity. So it's like there's an opportunity in this madness crisis that is being experienced, and is looking at how do we change to get to the side of, well, what's the lesson I'm learning here? And look at the lesson and go, oh, there's an opportunity.
Yes.
I don't know why that popped in my head. I just think it had something to do with the share that I heard from Helene. Thank you, Helene.
I think that those are important. It's interesting how people from around the world use different symbols or different ways of looking at it. You have yin and yang, okay, the symbol, but also we have in the modern era that the little angel and the little devil that sits on our shoulder, okay, but in Judaism historically, the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, the good and the bad little spirits that are on our shoulders, if you will. But it can also be up here, and you have to. So why? Getting back to the original question, why do you need a written document? If we can all have differing opinions, why do you still need a basic document? Yes, Lynn.
A reminder.
A reminder.
We forget.
That's correct. And that's why another reason, I've mentioned this before, we have been labeled the people who remember. Okay? Because we go through this constantly, every year. Okay? And we have holidays to remind us of certain events and what they do. Unfortunately, in the Passover service, okay, we don't really read the rest of the service. Lots of people say, oh, it's time to eat. And we don't read the last few pages that deal with redemption. Okay? Very, very important. I'm always dismayed that the majority of people get up after they've been fed, the coffee's been served, and they leave. They don't wait to the bitter end of the story, because it is a mixed blessing. You have a choice of which way the story is going to unfold, and they miss out on that part. Okay, they just don't. The ones who leave early. I'll get off my high horse, because I didn't. It's always been something that eats at my craw. And because I think that the people just don't finish the entire story then, and they miss out on what we're reading here. Anyway, and I apologize for what I just did. But any other comments here about the in the story of Jacob? What does Jacob do that's different than Moses? We spoke about the brothers, but what does Jacob do in that story? The Dinah story.
Oh,
It's
He admonishes the brothers.
It's a big contrast. Yes, please, Lynn.
Yeah, he admonishes the brothers. He says, you know.
At first he doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't deal with this. Okay, and it isn't until after the fact, okay, that he admonishes the brothers. But that's another way in the human experience, and the human experience, we can deal with things. They're two extremes. One takes action, the other doesn't. Neither is always the correct action. Okay, and we have to balance the two every time we make our choices. So I think that these stories are juxtaposed in certain ways, because the story unfolds for Jacob in a different direction, and now the story of Moses' role is going to change in a way in the rest of Exodus. Okay, because of the way how the people see him and how they react to God. Okay. Yes, David.
Marty, I'd like to take a little bit of a break for a few seconds to introduce you to my friend Ed Gunfer, and I will.
Hi, Ed. Just
Hi.
ahead. Okay, there he is.
Sorry for jumping in, guys. You welcomed me last year when I was out here, so
Yes, I
like an hour
remember
again.
you.
And this man is the person who went to one of the Boy Scout camps. Which was the one you were at?
Oh, 10 Mile River.
10 Mile River. Okay, that's kind of southwest from me. I'm in Plattsburgh, so Tupper Lake and Isle of Wild and all those places up.
That's right.
Yep, very
You're
nice.
familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. You bet.
Great.
That's
Okay. Break's over.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, Ed, take care. Thanks, David. Anyway, it brings back memories. Anyway, any other concepts here that anyone wants to mention in what we've been reading? Did you find anything strange about verse 27? We commented about Aaron's interpretation of things. Moses is talking here. Okay, and he says, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, each of you put sword on thigh, wear your sword and take it out of its sheath, and slay all of these other people who have partaken in this event." It's an empty space. Does God ever mention this to Moses? Okay, or is Moses using this atoning for his his own breaking of the tablets written by God? Is this falling on Moses' conscience? Okay, I'm going to pick it. Both of you had your hands up. I close, and I don't know who is first, David or Don. So I'll let you guys pick.
Go ahead, Louis.
Go ahead.
All right, I go. First of all,
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you go
Yeah,
first.
my microphone and video failed because I just diagnosed that there was a bad USB mixer. So I replugged everything, so I'm back. Yeah, I find this verse and the scene that follows utterly shocking.
Mm-hmm.
So incredibly barbaric. It violates what was inscribed in the tablets right off the bat. And I hardly know what to do, what to say about it, because very few people know that this incident actually happened in the Bible. It's never ever mentioned in the sermon.
Usually skipped over. That's right.
And I guess my comment is I just never know what to say about it. I'm just so utterly shocked by it.
So this is an interesting story because next week we will see what Moses does as a result of all of these things. But I am reminded also of another Levite that also when we talk of zealotry, okay, this is the actions of a zealot. Okay, there's another story that we're going to come up, and another Levite is involved. Does anyone know who that is? Yes, Lynn. Pinchas. That's right. So it's going to come up again, this theme. These are little things, little strings of information that are going through all of these different books, and that's that's going to be important. So somewhere along the way, Pinchas even gets to know this event. Okay, because they're told, dedicate yourselves to God. Okay. And that he's going to bestow a blessing on you for this deed. But this is an extremist view.
Very much.
So is it done out of fear? Is it done out of concern? Is it done out of love? You don't have to answer. Just think about it. Okay. Any other comments about this?
Yeah.
Yes, Suzanne.
I didn't hear, who was the other Levite?
Pinchas.
Pinchas.
Yes, it comes up much later when an Israelite and is found with a Canaanite in the tent of the meeting.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
I just did not remember his name.
Nothing bad
Okay.
happens to him. Okay. But and we always discussed zealot, in years past, we always use that story to discuss zealotry. But zealotry is an action taken up by this tribe or clan going way back. Okay. So it's an interesting theme. And I think it's worth discussing. Can people change? I don't know. Anyway, any other comments about that?
Did you have a comment you were going to make?
I have one, Marty.
Yes, please. Please.
I like the commentary, which, I refer to. It says, with Israelites' fate in the balance, that word you just mentioned a few moments ago, Moses orders the Levites in God's name to summarily execute the guilty, not sparing even their own kin.
That is correct. That's what it says here.
Right. So help me understand where the balance is, because I missed a few things
Okay,
there.
well, the balance was in reference to, good and bad. At that time, in Moses' mind, he feels that he is doing something very worthy. He's defending the reputation of God. Or is it out of a guilt feeling that his brother didn't do what God had asked? And is this a way of trying to atone for that? Or is this, we can have tons of midrash to fill it in. And indeed there is. Indeed there is. Rashi justified it on the basis of Exodus 22, which we spoke about. But we spoke about it as a trend in the sons of Jacob. Okay. So there are other things that occur, so as we go through, Nachmanides suggested that there were so many offenders to be brought to justice in the courts that it was necessary to kill them. Would you have? I mean, people have to fill in. Lynn was busy looking it up for us while we were
Just
talking.
looking it up. Yeah, it's 22:19. Whoever sacrifices to a god other than the Lord alone shall be proscribed.
Yes.
Doesn't say prescribed does not mean killed.
Kill.
necessarily.
It just means, well, is be abandoned or whatever. That's
Yeah.
right.
They
So,
could
but a
be
zealot,
kicked out or
but
something.
it's the zealot that has that flaw, if you will, that can carry it to the extreme. And that's something we have to understand. It's part of human nature. By the way, it's part of everyone that ever became a king and part of, or a queen. Okay? That we can't escape it. It's part of the human nature. And I wish Helene was still with us, because she would be able to get into some of the child psychology and everything else. We just can't escape all of that. Any other comments?
Yeah, Marty, I have one.
Please, Suzanne.
I think this verse emphasizes, and I've said this before, that the wages of sin is death, and these people paid the ultimate price for their sin. I mean, it may seem harsh to us, but I think the point was, don't do it. Don't. And I think God wanted that underscored. And I know, like you pointed out, that Moses said, "Thus saith the Lord." So I can't help but wonder if God wasn't speaking to Moses.
It's a good possibility.
That only he heard.
It may be. It may be. That's another midrash.
Because I don't think Moses would make that up.
Okay. But then we also know from previous readings about in Moses' anger much later in the story. Okay. What does he do with his staff and a rock? Out of anger.
He
Well,
strikes the rock.
Yeah, he strikes the rock and he paid a penalty for that. He did not
Yes.
go to
Yeah.
the promised land.
But what I'm saying is that these are other examples of his behavior, but also we have to look, and he's also a Levite, whether we like it or not. But it's just that it's a very disturbing segment in the story. And some groups of people have taken it more seriously and used it to justify their behavior. Okay. As we speak, there was a very serious incident in Israel by some zealots. Okay. And so these are probably Yitzhak Rabin. Same thing, a zealot. Okay. And this is part of the human condition that we have not escaped. And we have to be on guard for it all the time. And that's part of what the teaching is. That's part of what, and maybe it's important to put that down and to recognize it there so that we don't forget that we can slip into this ourselves at any given moment, that we must have that ability to curtail that evil impulse.
It's not it's not the striking of the rock, it's the demonstration of behavior.
Okay, yeah. Because he does it in anger. Yes.
Right, he could have done it in another.
That's right.
He could have done it, he could have striked out or demonstrated in another way, but the bottom line is the behavior. It's the actions of the behavior.
Agree.
Well, God told him to speak to the rock.
Yes.
And he just said, no, I'm not going to speak. I'm really angry. And
That's right.
he did an act of violence.
Yeah.
They asked, the purpose of the rock was to give forth water. There was no violence necessary.
That's right. So but that's where we're going with all of this. And I think it's important that we recognize that it's not always 100% good picture. Think of our own lives. It's never 100%. We always have ups and downs. And sometimes it's out of our control. Sometimes it's within our control. But I think that it's put here intentionally, whether it's allegorical or actual, doesn't matter. I think it's there for that purpose, to say, hey, be on guard so that you don't repeat all of these things. Okay. You don't want to go to different extremes. Anyway, any other comments about that?
No,
Grace, did you have something you wanted to answer? Or?
no, I just changed my mind. Thank you.
Well, I didn't mean to change your mind. No, because that was an excellent midrash too. All of these things, we're trying to fill in empty spaces. And we've been doing this since way back 5 years ago, when we first got started in all of this.
No, I meant to say that I changed my mind about speaking. I didn't change my mind about.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I jumped to a conclusion. That's it.
There you go. You're getting some exercise. There you go. Good job.
Okay. Anyway, any other comments about this? Well, I think this is, if there aren't, this is a good place to stop today. And next week, we will pick up on Exodus 32, verse 30. And because now Moses is taking a break and he needs time to think. So we'll see what some of his thinking is next week. Maybe he has to dream, maybe he has to converse with God. Who knows? We'll find out. Yes, Grace.
Just FYI, I will be, God willing, and the creek don't rise, and he is, and it might. I'll be in Green Valley Friday the 13th. I leave
Really
here
good.
Wyoming Wednesday, and I've got some special projects along the way and just pending weather.
Yeah,
So
that's a biggie.
yes, it is. Yes, it is. I look forward to being out there. I got lots of plans. So
Well, look on the bright side. At least you don't have to shovel snow.
I shovel very little snow because I have such wonderful neighbors that help take care of, me. And I'm very, very blessed and privileged. It's just great. I am very privileged by that. I have the greatest neighbors God could ever give me. And I'm just very, very grateful. Very grateful.
Well, you're a good gal. That's
Oh,
why.
thank you.
Any other announcements? Michael, are you going to be playing anywhere?
No, thank you for asking. Just,
Okay.
well, if you mentioned that, I do open my home Sundays between 2 to 3 afternoon for people who would like to come and hear some live entertainment for a while. And I've done that all through the COVID deal, when people would wear a mask and then maybe two people or 3 people at a time, and it worked out. It just worked out. But thank you, Marty, for asking that. That's most appreciative. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll bring my CD in my car so I can listen to your music while I'm driving out that way. Thank
There
you
you
for
go.
the reminder.
Well, if you're in Green Valley, and you have a few minutes to stop by, Grace, I would invite you and encourage you to do that.
Thank you.
You're
I'll
welcome.
take it into consideration. I'm only going to be there for 90 days. So,
Okay, that sounds, you might be able to squeeze that in.
And you can imagine
so.
how people feel back in Wyoming when she's gone for 90 days instead of 40.
No,
Anyway.
I don't think so.
Oh, golly.
I was pondering a question that Don asked me a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And if I could address that for a moment.
Sure.
Okay.
We have a
thank you,
few
Marty.
minutes, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Don, you asked me a question about if on the Shabbat, if a song entered my mind and I liked it, would I work on it? And I said I would, then I rethought that. I think that God might have been testing me to see if I would go that way. And I changed my mind. And I would say now that I would not do that.
Okay.
You are a devout person, Michael.
He is, in his way.
I guess in my way, yeah, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate that question. It made me think. See, and I appreciate that that it made me think about it. So it was a good question. Thank you.
I know sometimes I don't know how to write things sometimes, but those of you who can read backwards, these are 2 books written by Rabbi Sachs, who I just wanted to say a lot of the comments that I made come from these 2 books. Okay, give him credit. He's been a big influence in my life.
Thank you, Marty. Yeah.
So just to let you know. Any other comments or announcements? If not, Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom
And
Shabbat.
have a
Shalom
good,
Shabbat.
healthy week.
Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care.
Thank you, Marty.
Bye-bye.
Regards to Susan. Thank you.
And to Betty.
Have a
Thank
good,
you.
have a
Thank
good
you,
week,
Mark.
everybody. See you next week.
See
Take
you,
care.
see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.